So thanks for being here. I wanted to talk to you, first of all, why you decided now was the time that you wanted to write this book. Why was it the right time?
Well, my daughter, Carrie, was writing a screenplay when she was diagnosed with cancer. She'd been writing for about a year or so, and the story was called Sunrise in Memphis.
For years, fans thought they knew everything about Carol Burnett. But behind closed doors, Carol has been fighting a losing battle against addiction for 3 generations. Her parents, her daughters, and now her grandson caught in the middle of it all. Court papers reveal the shocking details Carol never wanted you to see, including the 8 times she tried and failed to save her daughter's life. After losing one child to cancer, Carol had to make the most painful choice a mother could face. Carol Burnett was born on April 26, 1933, in San Antonio, Texas. Her parents, Ina Louise Creighton and Joseph Thomas Burnett, both worked in the film industry. Her father managed a movie theater, and her mother was a publicity writer, but their connection to Hollywood didn't bring stability. Both struggled with alcoholism, and by the late 1930s, their marriage fell apart. After the divorce, Carol's mother moved to Hollywood, hoping for a fresh start. She left Carol and her younger half-sister Chrissy in Texas with their grandmother, Mabel Eudora White. Carol was still a little girl when she realized her life wasn't like other children's. Her father's drinking kept him away, and her mother was chasing a dream that didn't include her. Her grandmother became her only constant. When Carol was around 7, they packed up their few belongings and moved to Hollywood. They settled into a tiny one-room apartment in a boarding house near Hollywood Boulevard. The space was cramped, and money was always tight. Her grandmother, whom she called Nanny, did whatever she could to stretch what little they had. She took silverware from diners and saved scraps of food. Sometimes she even grabbed extra toilet paper from public restrooms. Despite their struggles, Nanny made sure Carol had something to look forward to. They went to the movies several times a week, watching double features with stars like Fred Astaire, Judy Garland, and Bette Davis. Sitting in a dark theater, Carol forgot about the small apartment and the hardships outside. She watched glamorous stars sing and dance, and for a few hours, life felt magical. Those moments shaped her more than she realized at the time. She wasn't just entertained. She was studying how stories were told. But outside the movie theater, loneliness crept in. Around the age of 8, Carol invented an imaginary twin sister named Karen. She didn't just pretend, she went all in. She changed outfits, ran between doors, and convinced neighbors Karen was real. The act continued until it became exhausting, and she finally let go of the charade. Carol Burnett wanted to be a journalist. That was her plan when she got accepted into UCLA in the early 1950s. But there was a problem. Her family couldn't afford the $50 tuition fee. Just when it seemed impossible, an envelope appeared in her mailbox. Inside was exactly $50. She never found out who sent it, but she called it her ticket to UCLA. That one act of kindness changed everything. She planned to major in journalism, but UCLA didn't offer it, so she chose theater arts and English, thinking she could write plays. That decision led her to an acting class. She wasn't excited about it at first. Her first performance earned her a D, but something happened when she stepped onto the stage at Royce Hall. She realized she had a gift for making people laugh. That moment changed the direction of her life. Burnett threw herself into theater, learning stagecraft and cinema lighting in courses like Theater Arts 28C. Even though she performed in makeshift theaters that looked like army barracks, she loved every second of it. By the end of her freshman year, she was named Most Promising Newcomer. That title turned out to be right, but college wasn't her final stop. She dreamed of moving to New York and performing on Broadway. The problem was money. That's when another stranger stepped in and changed her life. During a student performance in San Diego in 1954, Burnett caught the attention of a businessman and his wife. They were impressed by her talent. After learning about her struggles, the man made her an offer. He would lend her $1,000 to move to New York. That was a huge amount at the time. But there were 3 conditions. She could never reveal his identity. She had to use the money only for the move. And if she made it, she had to help others in need. Burnett couldn't believe it. She later said, "I had never seen that many zeros in my life." The money gave her the chance to start fresh. She arrived in New York in 1955 and moved into the Algonquin Hotel before settling at the Rehearsal Club, a boarding house for aspiring actresses. The $1,000 didn't last long, but it gave her time to chase her dream. Life at the Rehearsal Club was tough. It was home to young actresses struggling to get their big break. They shared meals, supported each other, and faced constant rejection. Burnett worked as a hat-check girl to survive. In 1955, she helped organize the Rehearsal Club Review, a showcase designed to attract agents and industry professionals. It worked. Stars like Marlene Dietrich and Celeste Holm attended. That event didn't just help Burnett. It created opportunities for many young women at the club. Even with that success, steady work was hard to find. Burnett performed in nightclubs, doing comedic numbers like, "I made a fool of myself over John Foster Dulles." Audiences loved her. The bit got her on The Tonight Show and The Ed Sullivan Show. Her first real TV role came in 1955 on The Paul Winchell Show. It was a children's program where she played the girlfriend of a ventriloquist dummy named Jerry Mahoney. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. The next year, she landed a bigger role on Stanley, an NBC sitcom starring Buddy Hackett. She played Celia, the quirky girlfriend of a newsstand operator. The show had serious talent behind it. It was produced live by Max Liebman and written by future legends like Neil Simon and Woody Allen. On paper, Stanley should have been a hit, but it aired against Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts, a show with a huge audience. Ratings were low, and after 19 episodes, NBC canceled Stanley in March 1957. It was a setback, but Burnett didn't slow down. Carol Burnett's big break came in 1959 when she made her Broadway debut in Once Upon a Mattress. The show opened on May 11th at the Phoenix Theater before moving to Broadway later that year. She played Princess Winifred, a loud, energetic, and completely unconventional royal who had audiences laughing from the moment she stepped on stage. The musical was based on The Princess and the Pea, but it was Burnett who made it unforgettable. She threw herself into the role with wild physical comedy and a kind of charm that felt fresh and unexpected. Critics loved her. Audiences couldn't get enough. And at just 26 years old, she earned a Tony Award nomination for Best Leading Actress in a Musical. The show ran for 470 performances at multiple theaters, including the Alvin Theater and the St. James Theater. Some critics called the production light and predictable, but Burnett's performance made it something special. She was different from the usual Broadway leading ladies. Instead of simply singing and dancing, she leaned into her comedy instincts, using her face, her voice, and even her body to get laughs. She wasn't afraid to look silly or push a joke as far as it could go. That set her apart. When she left the show in June 1960, she had already changed the game for Broadway comedies. Once Upon a Mattress had made her a star, but more importantly, it had proven that she was more than just a great singer. She was a born entertainer, and Hollywood was paying attention. That same year, she joined The Gary Moore Show. a popular variety program that became a perfect showcase for her comedic talents. From 1959 to 1962, she played a mix of hilarious characters, including the charwoman, a scrappy cleaning lady who daydreamed about being rich and famous. The character, dressed in a ragged uniform with a mop in her hand, became one of Burnett's most beloved creations. Her time on the show helped her grow as a performer. She worked with top comedy writers, learning how to improvise and sharpen her timing. She mastered the balance between humor and heart, making her characters not just funny, but also relatable. And in 1962, she won her first Emmy for Outstanding Performance in a variety or musical program or series. That same year, she took on a new challenge. On June 11, 1962, she starred in the CBS special Julie and Carol at Carnegie Hall alongside Julie Andrews. The two had completely different styles. Andrews was graceful and polished, while Burnett was bold and goofy. But together, they were electric. One of the most memorable moments of the night was their duet, You're So London, a playful song that exaggerated their differences. Another highlight was From Switzerland, The Pratt Family, a parody of The Sound of Music that had audiences roaring with laughter. The show was a massive success, winning an Emmy for Outstanding Program Achievement in the field of music. The special almost didn't happen. CBS executives weren't convinced that Andrews had enough star power to bring in viewers. Burnett didn't agree. As the story goes, a truck driver once gave her a ride and mentioned that he'd watch anything with Julie Andrews. That was all Burnett needed to hear. She pushed for the special to get made, and her instincts were right. The show was a hit, proving that she could hold her own next to Hollywood's biggest names. In 1963, she took another step in her career by making her film debut in Who's Been Sleeping in My Bed, a romantic comedy starring Dean Martin and Elizabeth Montgomery. She played Stella Irving, the quirky best friend of Martin's fiancée. It was a small role, but she brought her usual energy and humor to every scene. She later joked that she deserved an award for Worst Performance Ever Given in Movies by an Actress. The film itself got mixed reviews, and while some critics thought Martin seemed uninterested, they all agreed that Burnett was fun to watch. Carol Burnett fought for her place in television when few believed a woman could lead a variety show. After gaining popularity on The Gary Moore Show, she signed a 10-year contract with CBS. The deal included an option to create her own series, but when she decided to use it in 1967, CBS executives pushed back. They argued that variety shows were for men and tried to steer her toward a sitcom called Here's Agnes. Burnett refused. She wanted a show with music, comedy, and heartfelt moments, not a scripted sitcom. Because of her contract, CBS had no choice. They had to give her the green light. On September 11, 1967, The Carol Burnett Show premiered. A woman hosting her own variety show in prime time was almost unheard of, but Burnett proved it could work. The show was filmed at CBS Television City's Studio 33 and quickly became a hit. Audiences loved her mix of slapstick humor, musical numbers, and touching moments. Her ability to connect with viewers set her apart. The show's success wasn't just about entertainment, it was about breaking barriers. Women rarely had opportunities to lead in television, and Burnett's show changed that. For 11 seasons, from 1967 to 1978, The Carol Burnett Show dominated television. It aired 278 episodes and, at its peak, reached 30 million viewers every week. Even as CBS changed its time slot, audiences stayed loyal. The show won 25 Emmy Awards, celebrating its outstanding performances, writing, and costume design. In 2007, Time magazine named it one of the 100 best television shows of all time. TV Guide ranked it number 16 on its list of the greatest TV shows ever. One of the show's most famous sketches was Went with the Wind, a parody of Gone with the Wind. It aired on November 13, 1976, and became an instant classic. Burnett played Starlet O'Hara and walked down the stairs in a dress made from green velvet curtains, complete with a curtain rod still attached. The live audience erupted with laughter. The sketch became one of the most famous moments in television history. TV Guide later ranked it the second funniest TV moment of all time. Burnett also introduced recurring characters that became household favorites. The charwoman, a kind-hearted cleaning lady, became one of her signature roles. Another standout was Eunice from the Family Sketches, where Burnett played a hot-tempered daughter alongside Vicki Lawrence as Mama and Harvey Korman as her husband, Ed. These sketches were so popular that they led to a spin-off series, Mama's Family. Her success wasn't just about her talent, it was also about the team she built. Harvey Korman's sharp comedic timing earned him 4 Emmy Awards during his time on the show. Tim Conway, who became a regular in Season 8, was known for his unpredictable humor. He often made his co-stars break character from laughing, especially Korman. Vicki Lawrence started as an 18-year-old unknown, but quickly became one of the show's biggest stars. By the time The Carol Burnett Show ended on March 29, 1978, it had cemented its place in television history. After 30 years away from Broadway, Carol Burnett made a big return in 1995 with Moon Over Buffalo. This fast-paced comedy, written by Ken Ludwig, followed the chaotic lives of 2 struggling actors in 1950s Buffalo. Burnett played Charlotte Hay, a determined actress caught in a whirlwind of mistaken identities and last-minute changes. Audiences loved the energy of the show, and Burnett's performance earned her a Tony Award nomination for Best Actress in a Play. The production opened at the Martin Beck Theater on October 1, 1995, and ran for 309 performances after 22 previews. Behind the scenes, things were just as dramatic. A documentary called Moon Over Broadway captured the challenges of the production and highlighted Burnett's quick thinking when technical issues came up during rehearsals. In 1999, she returned to Broadway again in Putting It Together, a musical revue that celebrated the work of Stephen Sondheim. This show was different from her previous role. Instead of a traditional story, it was a collection of Sondheim's songs that explored love and relationships. Burnett performed alongside George Hearn and John Barrowman, blending humor with emotional depth. Her timing was sharp, and she brought warmth to the show's more introspective moments. Putting It Together opened at the Ethel Barrymore Theater on November 21, 1999, and ran for 101 performances. This role proved once again that Burnett could move between comedy and drama with ease. Beyond Broadway, she continued to surprise audiences with unexpected television roles. On March 17, 2009, she guest-starred on Law & Order, SVU, in the episode Ballerina. This time, she played Birdie Sulloway, a former rockette who owned a strip club and had a dark past. As detectives investigated a series of suspicious deaths, shocking details about Birdie's life were revealed, including her terminal illness and her involvement in the deaths of multiple husbands. Burnett's dramatic performance was so powerful that it earned her an Emmy nomination. Critics praised her ability to take on a serious role and make it just as memorable as her comedy. A year later, on November 23, 2010, she appeared in the Glee episode Furt as Doris Sylvester, the mother of Sue Sylvester, played by Jane Lynch. Doris was over-the-top, sharp-tongued, and just as intense as her daughter. One of the most memorable moments in the episode was her duet with Sue, singing Ohio from Wonderful Town. Over 10 million viewers tuned in to watch. Burnett's chemistry with Lynch was a highlight, and critics loved how naturally she fit into the show's humor. Burnett also shared her life story through her memoirs. Her first book, One More Time, was published in 1986 and became a New York Times bestseller. In it, she wrote about her childhood in Depression-era Hollywood, where she lived in a single-room apartment with her alcoholic parents and eccentric grandmother. Despite the struggles, she never let go of her dream of performing. One of the most touching moments in the book was when she recalled a mysterious benefactor who gave her $1,000 to move to New York. That gift changed her life and set her career in motion. She wrote the book as a letter to her daughters, making it both personal and inspiring. 30 years later, she wrote another book, In Such Good Company, which was published in 2016. This time, she looked back at the Carol Burnett show and shared behind-the-scenes stories about working with stars like Lucille Ball. She also talked about the challenges of leading a variety show as a woman in a male-dominated industry. In the book, she included letters from fans who had been touched by the show, proving just how much of an impact it had from 1967 to 1978. Carol Burnett's life has been shaped by love, loss, and resilience. Her first marriage was to Don Saroyan, her college sweetheart. They married on December 15, 1955, during a time when both were trying to build their careers. Their relationship struggled early on. Saroyan faced personal losses, including the death of his daughter from a previous marriage. At the same time, Burnett's career was gaining momentum. The gap between their personal and professional lives grew, making it harder for them to stay together. By Christmas 1959, they separated. Their divorce was finalized in 1962. Saroyan never found the success he had hoped for and passed away in 1990 at the age of 62. In 1963, Burnett married Joe Hamilton, a television producer who played a key role in the Carol Burnett show. They had 3 daughters together, Carrie, Jody, and Erin. Their marriage lasted for more than 20 years, but the pressures of Burnett's career and family struggles took a toll. The biggest challenge came when Carrie, their eldest daughter, became addicted to drugs as a teenager. It put enormous strain on the family. By 1982, Burnett and Hamilton separated. Their divorce was finalized in 1984. Hamilton passed away from cancer in 1991. After 2 difficult marriages, Burnett found love again in 2001. She married Brian Miller, a musician 23 years younger than her. The age gap raised some eyebrows, but Burnett never let it bother her. She often joked that as they got older, the difference seemed smaller. Their marriage has lasted longer than any of her previous ones. Burnett's greatest test in life was not in her marriages, but as a mother. In 1979, People magazine published an article titled Carol Burnett's Nightmare, revealing the painful truth about Carrie's addiction. At just 14 years old, Carrie was using marijuana, Quaaludes, and cocaine. Her addiction worsened quickly. Burnett sent her to rehab multiple times, but Carrie resisted. She even ran away from one facility, disappearing for days. She lashed out at her mother, but Burnett refused to give up. She later said she had to love Carrie enough to let her hate me. At 17, Carrie finally reached a turning point. During her 3rd time in rehab, a doctor pointed out that her idol, Janis Joplin, had died from addiction. That moment changed everything. Carrie realized she didn't want the same fate. She got clean and never looked back. Once sober, Carrie repaired her relationship with Burnett. She also found her passion for writing. One of her biggest projects was Hollywood Arms, a play based on Burnett's memoir, One More Time. Carrie came up with the idea and convinced her mother to work on it with her. They spent years developing the script with Broadway director Hal Prince. The play told the story of Burnett's tough childhood, mixing humor with heartbreak. Just as the play was coming to life, tragedy struck. In 2001, Carrie was diagnosed with lung cancer. She had been a smoker since her teens, and the disease spread fast. Even as she underwent treatment, she stayed focused on Hollywood Arms. She kept her spirits up, often saying, "Every day I wake up and decide today I'm going to love my life." But within months, the cancer spread to her brain. On January 20th, 2002, Carrie passed away at 38 years old. Burnett was devastated, but knew she had to finish what they had started. Before Hollywood Arms opened in Chicago, she prayed for a sign from Carrie. She didn't have to wait long. A bouquet of flowers appeared in her hotel room, looking just like the tattoo Carrie had loved. A bottle of champagne labeled Louise, Carrie's middle name, showed up backstage. On opening night, it rained, something Carrie always loved. But Carrie wasn't the only struggling with addiction. Erin Hamilton has also spent most of her life battling addiction. It took hold when she was a teenager and never truly let go. Over the years, she tried to get better. She went to rehab at least 8 times in nearly 2 decades. Each time, she stayed for a minimum of 30 days, hoping for a fresh start. But every step forward was followed by a painful relapse. In 2020, Erin hit a breaking point. She was placed on a psychiatric hold after a severe episode involving suicidal behavior. Her mother, now 87, had seen her struggle for years. But this time, the stakes were even higher. Erin had a son, 14-year-old Dylan, who was caught in the middle of the chaos. His home life had become unstable, unpredictable, and unhealthy. Neither Erin nor Dylan's father could provide the care he needed. Carol Burnett had always been a loving mother, but now she had to step into a new role. She and her husband, Brian Miller, filed for legal guardianship of Dylan. The court granted their request, giving them the power to make decisions about Dylan's health, education, and well-being. For the first time in a long time, he had stability. But the decision put even more distance between Erin and her mother. At first, Erin had supervised visits with Dylan. In 2023, those visits were suspended. Her behavior had become too unpredictable. For Carol, it was a painful choice. She had already lost one daughter, Carrie, to cancer in 2002. She couldn't risk losing Dylan to the effects of addiction, too. When Dylan turned 18 in September 2024, the restrictions were lifted. He was now an adult, free to make his own decisions. Erin had been sober for over 18 months and wanted to reconnect with both her son and her mother. But Carol had seen this pattern before. She had watched Erin get better, only to fall back into old habits. It was hard to trust again after so many years of heartbreak. Erin's struggle with addiction has left deep scars. According to court records from 2020, she had been institutionalized at least 8 times in the past 19 years. Some of these stays were in rehab centers, others in psychiatric facilities. Despite all the treatment, relapses kept coming. Addiction doesn't just affect the person who is suffering. It tears through families, leaving behind broken trust and painful memories. Carol Burnett knows this better than most. She grew up in a home shaped by addiction. Both of her parents were alcoholics. Her father struggled to hold a job, and her mother became verbally abusive when she drank. Carol learned early on that addiction wasn't just about bad choices. It was an illness, one that could destroy lives. Carol never wanted to go through that kind of loss again. But with Erin, the battle was different. The cycles of addiction, recovery, and relapse made it impossible to know what would happen next. Taking guardianship of Dylan in 2020 was another painful decision, but it was one she had to make. Her priority was making sure her grandson had the chance and a stable life. Despite everything, Carol has never stopped loving Aaron. She has also used her experience to help others. She has spoken openly about the impact of addiction, urging families in similar situations to seek help. She has reminded people that addiction is a disease, not a failure. She has encouraged others to turn to support groups like Al-Anon, just as she did when she was younger. Carol's legacy is one of strength, not just in her personal life but in her career as well. Over 7 decades, she has left an undeniable mark on entertainment. Her work has earned her some of the highest honors in the industry. In 2005, she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President George W. Bush. The award, the highest civilian honor in the United States, recognized her groundbreaking contributions to television. She stood alongside icons like Muhammad Ali and Aretha Franklin, honored not just for what she had done on screen, but for how she had changed American culture. In 2019, she made history again. The Hollywood Foreign Press Association created the Golden Globe Carol Burnett Award, an honor dedicated to celebrating television legends. She became the first-ever recipient. The award, presented by Steve Carell at the 76th Golden Globes, highlighted her lasting impact on the industry. Her show, The Carol Burnett Show, ran for 11 years and won 25 Emmys. Decades later, it still stands as one of the greatest variety shows of all time.